Welcome to the RSP Film Room. I'm Matt Waldman with the Rookie Scouting Portfolio. We're going to take a look at Thaddeus Moss, the tight end out of LSU. And I can't help but when I'm looking around, on YouTube, just trying to find some games to watch of him, that I see things or titles of shows about how he's a tough player to evaluate, or that I was on Fantasy Pros podcast with Mike Tagliere and Kyle Yates, and they were split on him. We're going to investigate and see how hard of an eval he is. He may be, and I can understand maybe why some people may think that immediately when you watch the guy. But when I watch him, right off the bat, can he bend at the hips? A little bit. A little bit of hip sink there on the pivot route. Looks like he could probably bend even more if he wanted to. So we're going to keep an eye out for that. But that looks pretty good to start off with, that as an athlete he can bend. But as a blocker, this is impressing me. Look at that. Nice cut block right off the bat on this defensive end who's playing at a 2-point, which is interesting in itself. But he gets off there, goes inside, works all the way through, drops that man easily. So he came across the body and worked through enough that he dropped that man. Then you see that he's not just an inside trips guy. They'll use him outside trips. And on this particular play, you don't see much here, but I still think it's savvy. What you're going to see is he's going to use a switch step and then a little hesitation move. Nothing with his hands, and there's nothing substantial or consequential about this. There's something substantial about it. It's not consequential to the play, but what you see is that he's stealing a release. Just like his daddy. Yeah, his daddy, Randy Moss. He knows how to figure out, what how his opponent's going to play him, and part of that is being able to use a couple of release patterns and see how that defender's going to respond to them, so for next time when he faces that man, he can do something off that. So we'll see if anything happens later. Now here's that defensive end once again. You're going to see him playing in a 2-point, then he thinks maybe I should play, let me get down into a third. No, you know what, I don't know what I'm going to do. Moss just decides, I'm just going to put you on the ground because you already look like you're losing your balance before the snap. So look at that nice little chip there and just shoves him to the ground. He notices, he just notices that the player's not decisive about his stance, probably going to be off balance, and he just delivers the forearm shiver and allows his left tackle to cover the guy up. So you're seeing awareness on the field. He's diagnosing what's going on early in the play and feeling out what's happening with guys covering him. You see him being able to cut a guy. You see him being able to deliver a chip. There's a lot of little things he's doing well here. Even here, it's nothing major, but again, works to the inside, sees the linebacker, gives a little bit of a forearm shiver. It's not that helpful on the play, but you get the point. Here's a nice little block as well. You're seeing that, as a H-back, he's patient getting upfield. He works to the inside shoulder. The defender has his hands up, but he's able to deliver that uppercut punch, latch on, and then move that downfield foot to turn 24 away from the play, and that opens the crease for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's a really nice block. He makes it look easy. And I think that might be part of the whole evaluation problem, is that he doesn't look like he's working that hard. I remember his dad didn't look like he was working that hard either. He got a lot of criticisms at times for things like taking plays off, but probably was one of the most technically skilled wide receivers ever, in addition to being a fantastic athlete. Look at that cut block. That's a savvy cut block right there. Let's look at it one more time. See how he works to the inside to tighten up that inside? He's doing that because he wants to set up the defender. He can't just run right at him and try and dive for him. If he does that, he's going to tip off the cut block. So he disguises it with a move to the inside. The defender then starts to work towards that outside shoulder of Moss, and then Moss just leans through and cuts it right out. So you're seeing that Moss, he can cut right away or he can bait you. He's one of the best cut blocking tight ends I've seen of this class. And for a guy who's playing H-back, that's important that you can do that. I have a lot of criteria for how I study players. And one of the things that can happen to you when you're scouting, when you have a lot of criteria that's written down and it's very well defined, is that you can become a slave to what's written down and not think about the spirit of the situation. You have to learn to think about context. And sometimes when you start writing down criteria of how you evaluate, you have to always keep the context in mind, because you watch this particular play. He's inside trips man. Number 9 comes across and he delivers a forearm shiver. You could sit there and mark him down for not having good technique here. Or you could remember this play and weight it too heavily as evidence that he doesn't block with good technique. But it's not about just does he get the job done either. Because on this particular play, he does get the job done. The technique isn't what you would call ideal. He's basically sliding here with that inside foot, and he brings the forearm shiver and delivers the forearm shiver into the man from a really off-balance standpoint. But you have to ask yourself, why does he do that, and does he do it all the time? And the answer is he doesn't do this all the time. The answer is that he's working downfield, he sees the man coming, knows that he probably doesn't have the time to get into an angle where he can actually stop the man with a traditional block. If he slowed down, if he turned and tried to get there, the defender's going to be able to work around him to just across his face, or just work through him, because Moss, by the time he gets turned around, is not going to be at a square position where he's going to be able to have forward momentum, so he's not going to be balanced. So instead, he gets in front of the man and then just drops the pads, and then he uses the forearm to kind of strike and move the man around and turn his hips through it. So this is an improvised type of technique. It's not one that you would call, he, works on this, in practice. But it's one where he understands the gravity of the situation, why the technique that he would use doesn't work or wouldn't work in this scenario, and why he has to create something on the fly. This is a creative play. It's a good play, and it's one that I think a lot of people would probably say, well, he needs to improve his blocking technique. Well, let's watch the rest of his game before we say that. We just watched him do work with Clyde, to open a hole for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, earlier, where he used perfect techniques. Here's one where he can't use a perfect technique, but he gets the job done perfectly. I mean, he drops this man to the ground. What more do you want? So, again, it's important when you're evaluating that sometimes you're going to listen to other people when they evaluate stuff, or you're going to try and evaluate on your own, and understand that sometimes the prescribed technique doesn't apply to the situation. And how are you going to review that? Here's a great example of Moss handling the jam here. The defender gets in his face, number 6. See how he even tries to talk a little trash at him, or even just physically try to intimidate him a little bit with that little jerk of the shoulders there, trying to get him to flinch. Look at this. See how he does that? Dumbest thing in the world for a player like Thaddeus Moss, if you ask me. Because Thaddeus Moss, again, I've watched enough of his tape before I even studied him in depth that it's obvious that he studied his dad and that he's learned from his dad. His dad ain't going to fall for any of that stuff, and he's not either. Watch him handle the jam, too. Now the defender's going to jam him. He gets under the armpits of number 6 and just makes a fool of him. Just lifts his hands up, gets through like it was nothing, runs the pivot route, slides outside, makes the catch, gets the 3 to 4 yard gain out of this second and 16. It's not a big play. Okay, so it's not like he won the big play here. But the defender trying to talk a whole bunch of mess or intimidate him doesn't matter. Goes through that easily. Does what he's supposed to do with the pressure coming. Burrow has to check down. He's ready and available. Turns a potential bigger loss into a small gain. It's about putting yourself in position to make positive plays. This is what he does. We're not asking him to do the impossible here. Some people would say, well, yeah, but, he wasn't as fast out of his break as he should have been. Well, this is a zone route. If you ask me, most likely, yeah, he got the linebacker triggered by that, so now he's going to come over here. but he wants to present a clear target, not run downfield fast. He wants to present a clear target, say, hey, I'm here. I know you need, if you need me. And Joe Burrow needs him because he's getting hit in the back just as he finishes releasing that pass. This is about a check down. It's not about a touchdown. And I think sometimes when people evaluate, they're expecting, well, he's supposed to do superhuman things. No, he does exactly what he needed to do on this play to make a positive play. Very good job against the... Here's another great example of Moss as a blocker. Burrow's going to scramble, and he's going to see Moss coming to the picture around the 20 here. Here he is. He's transitioning from route runner to blocker. He's able to get a punch in. Now the defender has his hands in the way. But watch how he takes that inside hand, and work it into the side. He has one hand high, and he works the other hand lower. He's not one of those, all I know is one template for blocking, where you either have your elbows up and you're old-fashioned blocking with the forearms, or the hands are in an even spot always. Now, this is a guy that can work his hands in different positions. He can get his hand to that, under that arm, into the side, and move that man and turn him so his back's to the quarterback. So smart play. I mean, here he is working through the hands, getting his inside arm low, and that is a conscious decision. You can see that he makes a conscious decision to put his hand there and turn the defender away. Fantastic effort by Moss. Smart play. A player's awareness is in the little details, little things that happen that may not be consequential to a play, but could be applied to other plays. Here he is coming off the line from right to left. He's working in the middle, and you have number 33 here, going to guard him across the middle here. And see how the defender is watching the quarterback, and he puts his arm up here. Moss is like, we're only 2 to 3 yards off the line of scrimmage here. I can mess with this guy. He gets his hand underneath the armpit of this defender and just throws him down to the ground. And that's that's smart. It's just, this is a guy who's aware of where he is on the field and what he can do physically, and plays with leverage, understands his opponent's leverage, and takes advantage of that. Because what if Joe Burrow doesn't, brings the ball down here and something happens in the pocket? Moss is ready now. He's open in an area where he could catch this ball and be wide open if Burrow didn't make this decision and had to go do something else. So Moss is always trying to think of ways he can get open. And and it's about beating your man first. Beat your man and be in position. The rest will take care of itself. Really like that play. And when you need Moss to get into the line and do some dirty work, watch this. Here's Derek Brown. He's going to work across and inside, and Derek Brown's going to mow him over. But that's really what you need to do on this play, is kind of sacrifice yourself and take that guy out of the play. Because if he just destroys Moss and is able to stay on his feet and get Clyde Edwards-Helaire, then what's it worth? But Moss is able to get across, get into the body enough that forces Brown to have to just kind of mow him down to the ground, but that opens up the crease for Edwards-Helaire to cut back through and get downhill. So as impressive as Derek Brown's physical ability is, Derek Brown just took himself out of the play with that, and Moss kind of baits him into that. Then you're going to see here, again, he's good with being able to strike inside, help with a double team, and then go to the next man here. So working in the box, he's able to work to the second level, get his hands in there and get a push. He gets knocked down on the play, but still he's able to initiate there, and that defender's occupied and wasn't even a part of that play. Then you're going to see him work against number 55, and he's able to stand him up and roll through that and put the man on the ground a little bit. Watch it one more time. Gets inside shoulder, punches, rolls through the hips, gives that crease there, even though there were other people there to handle that play. He does a good job opening that initial crease on that play. Point stance, he comes off inside, punch, gets into the right side of that guy's chest, He has one hand high, one hand low, right into the side here, and just plows that man aside. Look at that. He creates that crease there for the running back. Really well done. Here's another good example of good leverage here. You're going to watch him work inside on number one, square, but then number one, works that inside. He takes it, and he's able to turn the man's shoulders. And that allows Hilaire to be able to get the cutback. The thing about Thad Moss is that he's not an extremely fast guy. He's not Hunter Bryant, for instance. He's not going to be a guy that's going to stretch the field for you on a regular basis. At least that's what I've seen thus far. Now, part of it, too, is the use that they have from when you have Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Terrace Marshall. You don't really need your tight end to be stretching the field on a regular basis. He's been really good as an underneath guy. But let's not mistake some things as we're watching this out and up. He's well covered here, but the throw's made anyway. And the catch is the answer why it was thrown. Because Joe Burrow's worked with Thad Moss enough to know that open for Thad Moss is about where you can fit the ball for him to be able to win leverage there. And now you see, you've got the foot out of bounds here. And so a lot of people are like, well, he was out of bounds. But in college football, if you reestablish yourself before the catch, and he does, he's able to get his toe in bounds here. Now, there may be an argument about, did he really reestablish himself? And you can get into the weeds about whether he was in or out of bounds and probably have a compelling argument either way, depending on how this is interpreted, because as we know, the rule book is interpreted. It's not always cut and dry, even when maybe it should be. But we're going to look at just the act of being able to be aware that he's out of bounds, get his foot back in bounds, turn, make the catch with his hands away from his frame, and then make every effort to keep his toes in bounds as he's falling out. So whether he should have been, this should have counted or not, when you break it down from that standpoint, there's a lot of good things going on from this particular play, regardless of whether it should have counted or not. And to me, that's really what I'm looking at as an evaluator. He got his foot back in bounds before the ball arrived. And he did a good job of being able to get his body in a position to make the catch and keep his toes in the boundary. Fine play. I think what makes Thaddeus Moss a tough evaluation for some is that they think about getting open and his function in the offense, and they restrict it to what he's done in the box score, or real clear-cut examples of things that work. And what they don't look for is some of the finer details. You look at this particular play. He doesn't get a catch here. He doesn't even really get open here. But this is still a good thing. And this still projects well to the NFL. Let's explain why in a moment here. Let's look right back at it. One is, here's the linebacker on him, gets his hand in there. Moss reduces the shoulder so that he can stay square to the target. He's watching his quarterback, sees that his quarterback's going to break out here, and he knows that he also has a receiver here in the sideline here, so he doesn't want to break to the flat and clog up these passing lanes. So he's trying to help out in a way where he can be able to create a target but not clog up another target. So this is awareness. Spins. So he does a nice job spinning, using that downfield arm to kind of swat through that man and get separation downhill. So now he starts working downhill. And he sees his teammate work downhill. So now he breaks back to the outside here. So while he doesn't get open, he's being aware of where his teammates are, what his teammate needs, where his receiver is, and then what his quarterback needs, and finding creative ways to get space. Doesn't necessarily work, but you can see he doesn't wait a long time to do anything. He's pretty quick about diagnosing and acting. That's the kind of thing that makes good players. It's that invisible thread oftentimes It's that kind of underlying thing that ties everything together, is that the player is thinking on the field very quickly. He processes what he sees fast and reacts to the speed of instinct. And that's what he's doing here. He's making smart, logical decisions that help keep his teammates in a position to make a play where he doesn't clog that up. But he's putting himself in a position to potentially make a play, with his actions as well. So he's thinking about himself and the whole doing his job. Now you're going to see what I mean when it comes to him being a receiver. You're going to see that as a receiver, most of the time, he's a guy who is more of a zone stretcher. You can see right off the bat that he's working in between these two defenders. Got a defender playing outside shade, just kind of watching the quarterback, and he ends up letting that guy go, letting Moss go a little bit. But it's not Moss with great speed. It's just more about, is he going to be able to take advantage of opportunities where they scheme him from a vantage point where they're getting crossed up. And you can already see number 4's talking to, his teammate, number 31, right after that, like, hey, that was supposed to be your guy. So you can see that's how, Moss is probably going to get deep down the field most of the time. Most of the time, you're just going to see him here in the red zone. And again, spread the field, have him work underneath. He's a physical player. He's a guy who can drop his pads on you and mow you over. He can bounce off in direct contact. He's a very fluid player. He's not extremely quick. He's not fast, but he's fluid. And flexible, fluid players and guys with strength and balance, that can compensate somewhat, or at least, let's just say, it can be put to use. Here you go. Another route where he's able to work across the field. You can have an advantage when you run crossers or over routes. You can usually get a little bit of an advantage if you don't have a lot of speed. He's able to do that. We've already seen this play, the out and up, where he shows that flexibility and fluidity to be able to make the turn and adjustment like he did over here. I mean, that wasn't about speed so much. It was an out and up. That gave him a little bit of the advantage on a slower developing play. And the defender was really watching the quarterback a bit. And this was well covered. It just happened to be a perfect throw and a perfect catch. So again, the fluidity is a big part of that. It's just, how flexible are you? How much control do you have of your body over a tight space? Can you make dramatic changes of direction? It doesn't have to be, some dramatic changes of direction aren't about explosion. They're about really just range of how you can stretch your body and how you can turn your body, and then also the awareness you have of your body when you're doing complex processes. And then again, there's another coverage mess up here. You can see, 10 catches up to him, within the span of about 15, 20 yards on this particular play. 15 yards, and it's already caught up. But Moss is a strong dude. You can see, even when he gets a little knocked off course here, he doesn't lose his balance. And he uses the stiff arm here to finish up the play and get the score. So really when it comes to him, he's going to be used as an underneath receiver. You're going to see him most of the time as a guy who, short range routes after he's blocking someone, because he is a very good blocker. He'll get open often on the basis of him setting up as if he's going to block and then working out and filtering out. So he'll be beneficial on throwbacks, on play action, zone routes, and some short man-to-man routes as well. If you want to match him up one-on-one and let him out leap a guy, he has the opportunity to provide a pretty good matchup in those situations as well. And he's going to work open for you. He's a smart player. We've talked about that earlier, where Tanner Muse, high-end athlete, but Thaddeus Moss is a pretty smart guy in terms of being able to make the, play a little bit of, improvisational football. So that's kind of the deal with Thad Moss. Is he a tough evaluation? I don't think so. I think he's a pretty straightforward evaluation. What you get is he's not a special athlete like his dad was in terms of speed, short area quickness. He's not a big play guy, who's going to stretch the seams or beat you man to man on any type of route anywhere on the field, and that he can beat, cornerbacks as well as linebackers. No, this is a guy who's going to be who has a potential to become a very good blocker, to become a good possession receiver in zone, and maybe in some short man-to-man situations. So for fantasy people, he's probably not going to be highly productive in every type of scheme, and probably most schemes he won't be. But I do think that he has a chance to deliver for you as maybe a short-range, producer, a red zone option, and with some teams maybe even in the play-action game. And he could wind up being a guy that you might be considering down the line as, say, a borderline tight end 1 in fantasy leagues. In real football, this guy's going to be valuable. I think he can be a very good second tight end. I think he'll have a potential to develop into a starting tight end in the league because of his blocking ability and because of how smart he is as both a route runner and skilled as a receiver. He rarely drops passes. So what he got from his daddy is smart route running, and ability to catch passes, and he worked on that obviously on his own, but you know what I mean. You can see that in his game. So thanks for watching. For more RSP Boiler Room videos, you can check out my YouTube channel, Matt Waldman's RSP Film Room, at my site, www.mattwaldmanrsp.com.